Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dreamr Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Rich Diviney. Rich has 20 years of experience as Navy SEAL officer. He's retired now, but he has done great service. Uh, Also, he's a consultant speaker, facilitator, and a, and a debut best-selling author of The Attributes. Welcome to our episode. Welcome to this new brand episode, Rich. Thank you for joining this podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Rich, we're going to talk about dreams on this podcast. Everyone has a dream. A lot of people follow their dreams and fulfill them. A lot of people are not able to fulfill them. There's always something lacking, a motivation or the process or anything like that. Tell us about your very first dream of your life, like right from your childhood or teenage, like what was your first dream?
Wow. So I don't know if I can remember my very first, but I'll try to give you my earliest. And that was, I think, when I was in school as a teenager, and my brother and I really wanted a car, and specifically a Jeep. And so we just kind of we dreamed about it. We kind of set our intent. We started working, earning money, and then through several uh, conversations um, and some convincing with my dad, we actually were able to find and get ourselves a Jeep when we were seniors in high school. And that was back in, we bought it in, like, I think in 1989, and I still have and drive that car today. So it's kind of
Wow,
first of all, it's one of my favorite cars, but it's a reminder of one of my very first dreams and accomplishing that goal. So
wow. That's pretty amazing. Uh, you're a retired Navy SEAL officer. Tell us
yes.
about that. When did you realize that you want to become an officer? What was that process like? What are the biggest challenges of your life to achieve that?
Yeah. Well, so that started also when we were kids, and I started out. My brother and I started out wanting to be pilots in the Navy. We wanted to be pilots, and we figured the Navy, you could fly fast jets and land on ships. We both loved the ocean, so it was kind of a combination of both. And it was the early 90s when I learned about the Navy SEALs, and I realized that there were these guys who, gosh, it seemed like they did everything. They worked in the snow, underwater, in the desert, the jungle, and they just seemed pretty cool. And that's when I started thinking, well, maybe I want to try that. And ultimately, um, both my brother and I went to college at Purdue University. I was in our RTC program, and when it came time to pick what I wanted to do, I said to myself, well, I I knew I could be a pilot, but the SEALs, it was such a hard um, and such a hard pathway and such a challenge. I wanted to see if I could challenge myself, so I decided to go that way, and yeah, I ended up at SEAL training and ended up making it through, and spent the following 20 plus years in the SEAL team. So it was really a cool manifestation of a dream that took a lot of work, all the way up to kind of the manifestation when I actually became a Navy SEAL. But then, of course, took work as a Navy SEAL. I wasn't I wasn't done when I actually became a Navy SEAL. So because, again, we were in a very kinetic time frame with with September 11th, 2001 happening. I had only been a SEAL for about 5 years when that happened, and yeah, it got very, very busy after that. So I think it was one of those. It was one of those dreams that you set for yourself, you work very hard to get, but then you understand that it also takes work to maintain. And I think that's something that a lot of people have to understand about some of these dreams. Whether it's being a singer or a best-selling author or a Navy SEAL or whatever it is, right? There's the work and effort to get there in the first place, and then there's the work and effort to maintain and keep it and hold on to it. And there, it's different types of effort and work, but they're both very important because because that's that's part of the journey is actually work in that dream. So
You maintained that dream for 20 years. How were you able to do that? High pressure situation, live or die situations. You have seen a lot of things. How do you do that?
well, I mean, the I think the so, well, first of all, you train to handle high pressure situations, but I think the if I were to kind of boil it down to a concept that can be translatable, the way you maintain a dream, whatever it is you stay humble, and you understand that mastery of anything is a journey. It's not a destination. No matter how good you are or how good you get, there's always something to learn. There are always going to be people who are better than you. So you have to find those people who are better than you, and you have to model them. I've made it a habit for most of my life to surround myself with people who are better than me, because it's always, and it's not. It doesn't come from a self-deprecating way, or any you know hit on my self-image or self-esteem. It's really just so I can always have things around me to reach for, and have things to aspire to, and be able to look at people and say, hey, that person is so good at this, I want to aspire to be that good, or to get better. And so it's kind of this, it's a very positive type of competition, where you find people who they just do things better than you, and you say, okay, this I have something to learn, and it keeps you humble. And I think humility is a huge part of that.
Right, right. Surrounding yourself with people who are better than you, who do things better than yourself, and being that humble that maybe if we are doing something wrong, or if there's something we can do in another way, being able to ask them. I think you put it that very well. Uh,
Well, and that includes, by the way, that includes people who are younger than you as well. Because sometimes you think that with age comes experience, and that means you become somewhat of a guru. Excuse me. Uh, but the idea is that you're going to experience people. They're going to be people who are younger than you and less experienced, who
right,
in fact are better than you. And you shouldn't be intimidated by that. You should actually get excited about that, right? Because I remember seeing SEALs come into the SEAL teams who are younger than me, officers who are younger than me, and I remember thinking, man, these guys are so much better than me, and they're younger than me. And I said, I can learn from this person, or I can bring this person and help them aspire and become even better. So I think it's getting excited about those people, whether they're older than you or younger than you, rather than being intimidated.
wow, wow. Were you to name any of those people whom you admired?
Um, well, I mean, I tried to, growing up, I tried to read as much as I could, and I think there's probably so many different people that it'd be hard to understand. It'd hard to be kind of name them out, but I think reading as much as you can, researching as much as you can, finding those people who write about, who do things, who have advice, who have thoughts. And really asking yourself, when you do that, how does that mean? What does that mean for me? Because there's so many people out there giving advice, and so many people with things that they want to tell other people, and so you really have to sift through it. And I think uh, the process is to look at those people, those authors, uh, those business folks, those mentors, and say, okay, is this someone who kind of has all of those things, or at least most of those things I want? So an example would be someone who's not only successful at their business, but also has a great family life and great relationships with their friends, versus just looking at the guy or gal who's great at business, because you just don't know if that guy or gal is just great at business, but their family life is miserable, or their relationships are miserable. Then they're not doing everything you want to do. You want to say, well, I want to do this, but I want to do it in context of my whole life, and congruent with my whole life, rather than just one thing. And so So for me, especially when I was inside the SEAL teams, I would always look at those Navy SEALs who I felt were really phenomenal, spectacular Navy SEALs, but they also were phenomenal, spectacular husbands and fathers and friends, and so they had everything in balance. And so that's what I kind of looked for. So I think we all have to make our choice and say, what are those things that I really want, and look for those people who model a lot of those things versus just the one.
Right. Now, that's amazing because in these times when everyone is so much influenced, especially teenagers are so much influenced by Instagram influencers, and everyone has something to say. And as you said, it's just not what they are saying, but it's very important to pay attention to who is saying it and have the greater context about that person as well.
Yeah.
And once you resonate with that person, the values of that person and the life that person he or she is leading, and then you follow that advice. So I think very well put. Another question I have for you is, in your 20, 25, 30 years of dreaming, what is that one thing which you have realized that I wish I knew this right from the beginning? So the greatest learning.
Oh boy, that's a great question. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to dodge the question, but I want
Right.
to I do want to make sure I emphasize that that the I look back on those things, those lessons I learned, those mistakes I made, and I look at them, and I've never said to myself, I wish I hadn't made those mistakes, or I wish I could go back and change those things, because those things, those mistakes were essential processes in the pathway. I mean, the fact is, when you're in the pursuit of any dream, it's going to be tough. There's going to be challenge. You're going to stumble. You're going to fall. You're going to get hurt, and those falls and those bumps and bruises are an essential part of the process, because they allow you to learn, grow, and change your approach and gain knowledge that you wouldn't have otherwise had to help achieve that dream. So it's a difficult question for me to answer, because even when I think about things that I know now that I didn't know back then, I say to myself, well, it's good that I didn't know them, because I wouldn't, because had I known them, I think my path would have been different. I think I don't know, the pathway is part of the beauty of the whole thing, and I say that I would say go into any dream and pursuit of a dream with an open mind and curiosity, and and all the grit attributes and all the drive attributes that you need, all these attributes, and then just start working towards it, and know that along the way you are going to make mistakes. You're going to fail. You're going to fall. You're probably going to get hurt. But that's the process, right? That's why, I mean, none of us learn how to ride a bike without falling once or twice, right? I mean, it's just part of the process. And so I think that's the beauty. That's the journey that we have to enjoy. And so relish the journey.
Right. Basically being self-aware that this is the process and I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to learn from that. And that's
Yeah.
completely, it's
And
going to
maybe
lead.
and maybe that's what I would tell myself is to help myself understand that sooner, and so that I relish those sooner. Maybe that's what I would tell myself. So
Answer. I like that. Uh, After your retirement, you chose to be a speaker, a consultant. Tell us about that life.
yes, well, I so part of the pursuit of any dream is you have to be willing to step out over and beyond your edges. I call them your edges. They're like, we all kind of know, we all have this ring around us that we know. It's all certain. We know our boundaries, we know our skills, we know all this thing. To explore our potential requires us to go beyond our edges and to do things that make us uncomfortable, and to do things that we haven't tried before. And so I knew coming out of the Navy that I was interested in writing. I was interested in talking about ideas. I was interested in talking to people. I did not like public speaking at all. In fact, I hated it. And
Oh,
so I said to myself, well, that's probably an edge I need to conquer and pursue. And so that's what I did. And I was able to start doing some work and that work put me directly in front of people speaking and directly in front of people teaching. And in situations that I didn't really like, it made me uncomfortable, it made me nervous, and that helped. And so I did that for a couple of years as I kind of thought about so the idea for the book, and it kind of matured into my system, and then began writing. And I would say writing, even, I mean, I love writing. I've always loved writing, so the writing part wasn't that difficult, I think. But when you write something and suddenly it gets out into the world, I know for me there was definitely an immediate sense of nervousness because suddenly my ideas were getting out there, and I was like, okay, there it is. But that's part of the edge. That's part of that exploration. So it's been fun, and it's still, by the way, just for everybody, I'm still climbing. I'm still working it. So this is not. I'm certainly not. I'm at the very beginnings of my next goal, which is to be an author and build a company and things like that. I'm at the very beginning. So I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm in the process of the long, hard climb, which is fun.
right. I'm going to take a step back over here. I wanted to talk about a very important thing. When you were deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the things probably you have experienced over there, and all of that stuff, did you ever think to quit your dream? That I've had enough of this, and this is the time. Like, were there any weak moments for you? Like, and if there were, how did you battle it?
Yeah. Um, well, again, I would say my time in Iraq and Afghanistan were times that I was maintaining, and I was maintaining my dream. When it comes to war, I mean, yes, I wanted to be a Navy SEAL, and that going to war is part of that job. But I would not say war was fun at all. I mean, that is not. It's
Right.
war really is bad for everybody, and so I think in those times I recognized that this was part of the job, and part of my job was to do that and execute that successfully and safely, so that those all my teammates could survive and come home alive, but B, we could actually help perhaps make the world a safer place, and so I think it was a little bit of that kind of helped me um, stay focused in the times. So if we back up, though, if we talk about those times when I was becoming a SEAL, I mean, there were certainly a lot of lows during that time, and I think when it comes to those types of lows, an understanding of your outcome and a firm vision of your outcome is necessary. So I'm a big believer in visualization, and visualize your outcome, visualize where you want to be, and understand that. And I think that helps when you're in those kind of trenches to say, okay, and so here's a good example. I don't know, rock climbers are a great example of this, and I don't climb because I don't like heights. So even though I had to jump out of airplanes so many times, but I don't like heights. But a rock climber, when a rock climber is looking at the face of the cliff or the mountain that they want to climb, they will kind of do a quick analysis and say, okay, I think I'm going to go this way, that way, that, and they'll just put together a map out a quick plan. But every rock climber at that point knows that they need to start climbing, okay, to figure it out. And as they climb, they're going to realize as they climb that their original plan is not going to be the same thing that they use going up, because they're really looking for the best foothold and handhold. And so as they're making that climb, they're looking for these new footholds and handhold. Well, sometimes they recognize that the next best foothold or handhold is actually like over to the right and down, which means they have to go down to find the next best foothold and handhold, which means that for a moment it seems like they're going away from their goal, even though they're still moving towards it. And that's how it goes with any goal. When we're we're on the journey towards any goal, we are going to have to recognize that sometimes we're going to have to do things and make moves and make turns that feel like it's taking us away from our outcome. But in fact, it's just allowing us to get a better foothold and handhold. Sometimes in that climb, you're going to lose sight of the horizon, of the mountaintop. I mean, of the peak, right? Because you're going to go into valleys and go into underneath ledges, and so sometimes in the pursuit of our goals, it's going to feel like we lost sight of the peak, of the top. And it's really important in those times to have that mental image in your head so that you can always understand and know where you're headed. So I always say, be resolute in your outcome, but be flexible in the approach. And I think that's what we have to remember going towards goals.
Amazing, amazing. A lot of learning from that experience of yours. Uh, your new book, your first book, debut book, The Attributes, came out. Please tell us about that. What's the book about? Where did you get the inspiration to write about it?
Yeah, well, it's fairly congruent with what we're talking about, because I am really interested in what I call elemental human behavior. So what are those things that allow us and cause our behavior in those most raw moments, and we always hear when things are really tough or challenging, the real us shows up. Well, I'm kind of like, okay, who is the real us? Because that's really what we want to know about ourselves if we want to understand how we can perform, and especially how we can perform in stress, challenge, and uncertainty, and the pursuit of goals. And so I had been running a form of SEAL training. It was a specific assessment and selection program for a SEAL team, and realized that I had to separate what are known as skills, kind of performance skills, from these innate qualities that kind of drive performance, because they get conflated. And so the book, and so I kind of did that work when I was in the SEAL teams. And when I got out of the SEAL teams, I was speaking about high performing teams to businesses and things like that. And a lot of these businesses were coming to me and saying, "Hey, Rich, we're forming up these dream teams, best salesperson, best graphics designer, best whatever, and they're good for a few days or whatever. But as soon as things go sideways, or the environment becomes uncertain, the teams are turning toxic, right? They're falling apart. Why is that?" And I said, well, because you're selecting your teams based on the wrong things. You're not selecting them based on these innate qualities. So the book is really about attributes. There's a difference between skills and attributes. And while skills are learned and they're not inherent to our nature, and they direct our behavior, they tell us what to do in certain situations. Here's how to and when to throw a ball or ride a bike. And they're also, because of that, they're very easy to assess, measure, and test. They are not what tells us how we're going to behave in stress, challenge, uncertainty, when the environment's uncertain. That's when we lean on these innate qualities, these attributes. Our attributes are innate. We're all born with levels of adaptability and resilience and things like that. And then they inform our behavior. They tell us how we're going to show up in a certain situation. And they're hard to assess, measure, and test. It's challenge, stress, and uncertainty that show them the most visibly and viscerally. And so in the book, I describe the difference, and then I describe these key core attributes that we all have. We just have different levels of, that drive our performance. So what are the attributes that make up grit? What are the attributes that make up drive? What are the attributes that make up leadership, team ability, and mental acuity? And the book really highlights that. And the book is really, when you read it, it's about the reader. It's not about Navy SEALs. It's not about super high performers. It's really it's about you, if you're reading the book, and how you can kind of deconstruct and kind of figure out your own engine and figure out how you behave, and then improve on those things that you may want to as you pursue goals.
So I'm going to ask you a question. I know it's pretty rough, but what are the 5 key attributes to become a successful dreamer?
Yes. Okay. So there's the dreaming part, and then there's the pursuit part, right? So I think the dreaming part doesn't take much. The dreaming part takes open-mindedness, and the dreaming part takes curiosity. The dreaming part takes a little bit of narcissism. I talk about narcissism as an attribute, okay? And narcissism, yes, too much is bad, because there's a disorder, right? But narcissism basically is the desire to stand out, to be recognized, to be adored, right? And so on small levels, a little bit of narcissism can allow us and prompt us to in fact create these audacious goals. I mean, why does someone want to be a famous singer? Why does someone want to be an author? Why does someone want to be a Navy SEAL? Why does someone want to be a top surgeon? Well, part of that reason is because they want to be special. They want to stand out. They want to do something that not a lot of other people do. That's a little bit of narcissism, right? So I think those are the ones that come into play when you're actually creating the dream. When you're executing, when you're in pursuit of the dream, that's when you have to lean on the grit attributes, which are courage, adaptability, resilience, and perseverance. You have to lean on a lot of the other drive attributes, which are self-efficacy, discipline, cunning. And then when you're working with people, you have to lean on the leadership and team ability ones, which are empathy, decisiveness, selflessness, humility, integrity, conscientiousness. So I think all of those come into play in the pursuit part of the goal, whereas those other ones I previously described come into play in the dreaming part of the goal. So I think there's two phases there.
Wow, awesome. Your book came out, The Attributes. Would like to tell all our listeners and viewers the book is available on Amazon and everywhere else. Please go give it a read. It's an amazing book. We're gonna link that in the description as well. We're gonna link Rich's social media handles in the description as well. Please go and follow him as well everywhere. Uh, Navy SEAL, author, consultant, all of that. What's your next huge dream? You spoke about starting your own business or a startup. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I think I'm in. I'm still in the beginning stages of this dream, right? Which was to write a book and build a business around it, because I think this attributes concept can really help a lot of people. So the dream is, let's get this information out to as many people as possible so that it can help them pursue their dreams. That's the next goal. Now I certainly have other goals mapped out beyond that, which would be, to create more business, to kind of, I'd love to kind of help other people explore their potential even more. I love the environment. I love space exploration. I love all that stuff. So I have, you don't only have to have one goal. You can have multiple, although you just have to make sure you're focused in on one or maybe one or two at a time, so you're not you're not overwhelming yourself. So yeah, build this thing out, help as many people as possible, generate something that really helps people, and then after that, maybe write another book, and help even more people, and meet cool people like yourself in that process, right? So I think that's and oh, by the way, also be a great husband and father to my wife and kids, which is probably the most important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Just as we close this up, we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and dreaming has become much more difficult as well in these times. A lot of people have dreamt of a different life before the COVID thing, and now a lot of dreams have been affected. Uh, of course, there are a lot of new opportunities as well, and we don't know what the post-COVID world is actually going to look like and how it's going to affect individuals. What's your message to people who are still struggling these times?
Yeah. Um, the message is that we all have inside of us what it takes to get through challenge, stress, and uncertainty. And if we don't think we do, then look at 2020 and pat yourself on the back, because we're all still around. If we're listening to this, right, we're all still around. So some of those same things that you used to get through 2020, you can actually use to get through the next uncertain time frame. We all, uncertainty and challenge is a part of life. It'll always exist. So the only thing we can be certain of is that there will be more uncertainty and challenge ahead of us. And I think to understand ourselves and understand our own makeup and our own engines is one of the best ways for us to confidently step into every day and the future, understanding that even though we don't know what's going to happen, no matter what happens, we'll figure it out and we'll perform. Now, it may not be pretty, okay? It might be ugly and it might be tough and it might be challenging, but we'll still figure it out. And then, by the way, there'll also be times that are blissful and wonderful and awesome, right? So, but that's life. Life is up. Life is a sine wave. It's a series of up and down, and it has to be that way because the ups feel great because of the contrast of the downs, right? We all know this. You can't. I mean, candy will taste sweet, the sweetest after you eat something bitter, right? I mean, that's how it is. It's the contrast. Whereas if you eat a lot of candy, then you stop tasting the sweetness. So we can't have lives that are just great all the time because then it won't feel great anymore. It'll just feel normal and blah. So we have to honor those contrasts and understand that they're inevitable and know ourselves in a way that allows us to show up confidently.
I absolutely love the line when you said, we have it inside, to go through this. Whatever it takes, we have it inside. That's an amazing conclusion to this podcast. Thank you so much for being with us, Rich. Listeners, please go and read The Attributes. Looks like an amazing book. I'm going to read that right now after the podcast on Kindle. So please go and read. Thank you for joining us, Rich. If there is anything you want to speak, please go ahead.
No, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate your support. So
awesome. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon then. Another podcast, another book.
Sounds good. Sounds good.